What's up, everybody? It's me again. What we'll talk about today is another touchy subject along the lines of history, because some people, benefit from other people being under an illusion of history that's not true. But my discussion for today is Africa, time of trouble, the coming of the Europeans. And very few people talk about this subject from an African point of view, because the coming of the European, not only to Africa, but the coming of the European to the world, was disaster. And yet, when you read their history books, their arrogant assumption is that the coming of the European was the bringing of the light. And yet, everywhere these people went in the world, they put out the light. They brought no civilization to anybody, anywhere, any place in the world. Now, I'm reversing history as they have so arrogantly written it, but if I couldn't prove it, I wouldn't waste my time saying it. The first thing you have to deal with is one of the great myths of human history, and that is the myth of the invader as civilizer in conquest. No people have ever conquered and invaded any other people for the sake of civilizing them. The idea itself is ridiculous. This is even true when Africans are invading Africans. This is true across the board. This is true every time in human history. Now, I can point to what seemed to be an exception, and if you've been history a little bit, you can make it an exception, but you'd be doing just that, bending history and making it an exception. If you look well, it's not an exception at all. When the Cushites invaded Egypt and created the mighty 25th dynasty, they improved Egypt. They put Egypt's house in order, and they gave Egypt her last great walk in the sun. Now, here's a case where the invader did some good. Does that prove me wrong? Absolutely not. I still maintain the invader always does more harm than good. So what about this case? Well, the invasion was not really an invasion in the true sense. The Cushites from the south were relatives of the Egyptians. They were African relatives invading the house of another African relative and telling the relative, put your house in order before those foreigners come by here and take over both of us. So it wasn't an invasion in the true sense, because those in the south were just as much of the north as vice versa. And when they invaded, the question of the three great generals that invaded, Castor, Pienki, and Tiaka, was, are you obeying the old religion? Are you true to the great religions of the river? And they asked them, are you obeying the laws, the moral laws laid down by the last great goddess of the Nile Valley, the woman goddess Maya? Are you true to her teachings? Now, when you look today and see all these people hung up on women's lib. These African men, 751 BC, asking other African men, are you obeying the moral laws laid down by a woman? This will blow some people's mind these days, talking about white women's equality, when these people wanted to know whether you were obeying a black woman, an African woman who was a god. And these people are worrying about whether they should elect a woman as an executive. We were talking about God, 751 BC. Now, when you analyze what I'm talking about, I've showed you an exception, but when you analyze it, it wasn't an invasion at all, just one relative trying to put another relative's house in order. It wasn't an invasion at all because the South and the North were one and the same. I could show you another example outside of Africa, or outside of Egypt, the African invasion of Spain. The Africans and a sprinkling of Berbers and Arabs gave Spain the greatest material civilization it ever had before or since. Yet, the Africans, Berbers, and Arabs so depressed Iberian or Spanish culture to the point it hasn't recovered to this very day. If you go to Spain right now, when they point to some achievement, it is some achievement that the Moors left behind. They still haven't recovered. I maintain every invader depresses the culture of a people and takes more away ultimately than they ever give. I'm talking about the Europeans coming to the world and doing the entire world more harm than good. And if these people say that they are the bringers of the light, they are liars and hypocrites, because they brought no light, they put out the light. And they are in a position right now, of losing the world as they so see it, and each time they call an age their golden age, it is that period in time where they have somebody outside of Europe to exploit. They have never had a golden age when they had only Europe to feed on. And they are being pushed right now to a point where they are being deprived, as they so see it, of the land and resources outside of Europe that obviously belong to other people, and they would rather blow up the world if they can't rule it. And mark my words, the people of this world had better prepare to protect themselves or prepare to go back in chains, because they would rather enslave it or destroy it if they can't rule it.